things off and say welcome to everyone. Welcome to our panelists, our moderator, and attendees. It's the third official day of Massachusetts STEM Week, a really exciting initiative to bring STEM career awareness to high school students, middle school students, elementary school students. It's been a jam-packed schedule this week, and every event has been really unique in its own way. And I've personally walked away learning so much more. So thank you to everyone who has taken the time to engage, prepare, and participate. So today's event is going to be featuring Tufts University STEM ambassadors. And today's event is titled, My College Experience Navigating STEM as a Person of Color. So this event was organized in partnership with the Mass Hire Metro North Workforce Board, Metro North STEM Network, and Tufts University. My name is Penny Haselli. I work at the Mass Hire Metro North Workforce Board as the Senior Director of Program Operations. My colleague Heather Darby, she's been really leading the charge with organizing these events. So really a shout out to her for, convening everyone to do this amazing work. I'm going to go through some introductions of our moderators and our panelists. So our moderator will be Sophia Mary Hamden. Before arriving at Tufts in 2021, Sophia earned her bachelor's degree in English literature from the University of Mary Washington and a master's degree in higher education administration from Boston College. She oversaw the campus activities board at Boston College and promoted inclusive programming practices. As the program administrator overseeing the STEM Ambassador Program, she's responsible for the successful execution of the program and development of the ambassadors. Sophia is the main contact for Tufts community partners regarding the STEM Ambassadors Program and within the Engineering Ambassadors Network for Tufts. Welcome, Sophia. One of our panelists is Gustavo Alvarez. Gustavo is a sophomore electrical engineering major from Texas. Outside of class, he's involved in STEM Ambassadors, SOLs, and Tufts Robotics. Gustavo also has held numerous research internships. Welcome, Gustavo. Other panelist is Leslie Jaramillo Martinez. Leslie is a junior mechanical engineering major from Texas. Outside of class, she's involved with STEM Ambassadors, Tufts Robotics, Latinx Peer Leader, and STOP. Welcome, Leslie. We also have a panelist, Brian Valdivieza. Sorry if I mispronounced that. Brian is a senior biochemistry major from Texas. Outside of class, he's involved with STEM Ambassadors, First Center Peer Leader, Vietnamese Students Club, Association of Latin American Students, and United Immigrant Justice. Welcome, Brian. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Sophia.
Awesome. Thank you, Penny, for the warm welcome. I know that we're all very excited to be here. Just to get us started and to learn a little bit more about our panelists, I know Gustavo had emergency and couldn't join us today, but for Brian and Leslie, could you all please share a little bit about yourselves and your backgrounds? So namely, your hometown, your major, I know we heard some of those things, your specific interests within STEM, and perhaps some identities that have shaped your experience at Tufts, if you're comfortable sharing. So maybe we can start with Leslie and then go to Brian.
Hello, everyone. My name is Leslie. I'm a junior at Tufts University studying in mechanical engineering. I was originally born in Mexico and my family immigrated to the United States when I was about 2 years old. I am majoring in mechanical engineering, but my interest really lies within the medical device industry, and I am hoping to work in hardware. Part of that has been because of my family. We have pretty much built everything in our home, and in Mexico, our home itself was built by my family. And so building and designing have always been something I've been interested in.
Hi, everybody. Kind of similar to Leslie, I was also born in Mexico and immigrated to the United States when I was young. We actually lived pretty close to each other in Texas, a couple hours away, but relatively close. So I'm from San Antonio, Texas, and basically I moved there when I was around 4 years old, and now I'm a biochemistry major here at Tufts. Pretty much it stems down to I wanted to do pre-med, and I wanted to explore more of like chemistry because I just think chemistry is cool. And then biochemistry is just basically like both, like how they apply to our bodies. So I think it's really, for me, it was just really a thing of I like chemistry, I like bio, and I also like am pre-med, so I possibly want to go to medical school. But as I've realized this year, there's a lot of more tracks that I could go. So I'm not really sure what I'm going to do after I graduate. But my main like driver to be a biochem major is more of like the interest in the subject, but also possibly being a doctor and moving on from there.
Awesome, fantastic. I had no idea that you all lived in Texas so close to each other. That's really funny. That's awesome. So if you all could now share a little bit about what experience or person perhaps inspired your interest in STEM.
So for me, it was actually in 6th grade. I went to an academy and we would have these career days. And so one of the kids' parents was actually an engineer who had started a nonprofit organization. And he would go into different communities who didn't have access to clean water. And with the community, they would come up with this design for a well they would build. And a big focus for the work he did was sustainability. So if the engineers left, would the community still be able to use that well on their own? And I had grown up hearing stories about my mom. She didn't have access to clean water when she was growing up. And so to have the first exposure to engineering be this guy who came to give a talk about how he helped people in communities like my mom had grown up in was really motivating. And in the end, that was what led me to learn more about engineering and is why I decided to become an engineer.
That's amazing. How old were you at the time?
I was in 6th grade. I have no idea how old I was.
Maybe that's amazing. Probably like 11, 12, probably somewhere there. Yeah. That's really cool. And then from there, were you kind of focused on engineering all through middle and high school, all the way to college, or kind of
I was still on my way. I wasn't entirely sure like how to get to that point because I had heard about this career and I found it interesting, but it wasn't until I was in 8th grade, my algebra teacher kept pushing me to apply to this magnet school in Dallas, and it was a public school, so my parents wouldn't have to pay. All we had to do was prepare for an exam, and if I did well on the exam, then I would get into the school. And the reason I really followed through with my plan was because of my teacher.
That's wonderful. That's amazing. Have you talked to your teacher since coming to Tufts at all?
I went back my freshman year. She doesn't work there anymore, so I haven't been able to see her. But I did go back to visit my middle school teachers because a lot of them also helped me with the application because I was also writing essays. And my 8th grade reading teacher helped me with that. And the algebra teacher would have like tutoring sessions where she would spend after school teaching us topics we needed to know for the exam.
That's amazing. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Leslie. All right, Brian, how about you?
For me, it was kind of one of those things where in middle school, when my counselor saw that I was getting like good grades in STEM, and before then, it wasn't more of like it wasn't that I wanted to be like a scientist kind of. At that point, I have a really sick mother who has been sick like most of my life, and so I guess when I was a kid, I just got the idea of I want to be a doctor so I can help like my mom, but people like my mom who like need help and like can't afford it. And so that it just so happens that STEM is like you needed to be good at STEM to do that. And so I kind of just tried hard at most of my classes but I did the best in like bio and like math. And then my counselor when I was like in 7th grade showed me this pre-freshman engineering program. So like that was trying to teach middle school students and high school students. There was like different versions of it, like prep 1, prep 2. So there was like every year, every summer you could like apply and like do it. So essentially they would teach you a lot about engineering. So I'm kind of surprised I didn't become an engineer. I thought about that recently, but I know a lot about engineering, or not of like rudimentary stuff about engineering, like the basis level. But basically it just reaffirmed the fact that I could do STEM and that like I was capable. It was a cool program because I think it brought kids from all over the city. So I lived in like the south part of San Antonio, Texas, which is like the more low income part of the city. And so it was cool because I would go to the summer program and I would be with these like all these other kids who are like not low income, and like it was like obvious because I was like I would get like the free lunch, and like they would like go buy like Chick-fil-A or something, and it was interesting because I was still doing like I could do the work and I could like it was graded. You literally got a grade for like at the end of the year. Like you would walk the stage depending on if you got a 98 or above. And I did walk the stage like all 3 of the years that I went. And like it just motivated me to like know that like even though I come from a very like disadvantaged background, I could still do what other people are doing. And granted, it was with a lot of help of a lot of people. I felt like I was capable, so I just kept striving for it. And then for chemistry, I had a really good sophomore year chemistry teacher who just like was amazing. It was one of those people, one of those teachers that just like was good at explaining everything, and just like it just clicked for me. And he was great. And ever since then, I liked chemistry, but it wasn't until I got to Tufts and I was like, yeah, I got like it was confirmed because I didn't really have another chemistry teacher after him because he left after my sophomore year, but it was confirmed on and at Tufts pretty much. But there's like a whole like prep program and all this other random stuff that'd be here.
Well, I think that's really incredible, and I think that it's wonderful that there even was a program like that after middle school, like in your city area. I think that's amazing, and I feel like teachers like that can make the most boring or most complicated subjects so fascinating and so easy to learn. So I love that you had that. Has there been anyone like that since your chemistry teacher at Tufts or in your later high school years?
Yeah, I think for me, it was also really cool because my junior year, going to my senior year that summer, I was able to get a research type of thing going on, and I met this professor at my local university, like University of Texas San Antonio, and she did research in physics and biophysics, and she basically made nanoparticles, which is just really small particles, and basically just like this she was a really cool professor because she didn't like teach me anything as far as like school wise, but she was my PI at that moment, and she would just teach me about how to be a scientist and like how she got there because she went to Rice University. Rice was like one of my dream schools back when I was like a high schooler, and it was just cool seeing somebody be like so far into the process because at that point she had been in like academia for like 10 plus years. And even now I still like email her eventually every so often. I'm like, yo, how are you doing, how's the lab? And she actually had like a kid last year, so like she was also one of the main motivators because she also believed in me and was really excited whenever I told her like I want to go to college and I want to apply. I applied to through Questbridge, all this stuff. I would just like tell her, and then she would be excited for me. So she was someone else that also helped me, even though she wasn't like a direct like teacher. She was a mentor for me for sure.
That's amazing. I love that you had someone like that for research, especially. I feel like it's like a whole different part of your learning process. That's wonderful. I'm so happy for you both. Fantastic. So I guess kind of moving from your middle school years into high school and then to college, can you all share a bit about your college admissions process, right? Like how many schools did you apply to? How did you choose the schools you wanted to apply to? Was it related to your STEM interests? What was it like writing essays? Like what kind of help did you get? Just share about your college admissions process.
The college admission process for me is something I don't want to repeat again. I remember I started listing out all of the colleges I wanted to apply to when I was a junior, and I was very lucky to have a college admissions advisor for my high school. And so the teachers at my school had been working there for a long time, and they had set up this system. So most of the teachers had volunteered to help us with our applications. So our English teachers would help review our essays, and our math teachers would help us prepare for exams. And there were specific teachers that were always open for recommendation letters. And so I had the support system there. Sometimes it was hard to get help because there were so many students. And I remember sometimes like crying every night for a couple of days while I was sleeping because the college application process was really stressful because my mom couldn't help me with a lot of it. And so I didn't really know what I wanted in a college. And at that point, I think I started really questioning my career choice because I wasn't entirely sure if I was prepared to go into engineering or if I would be able to complete it. And so for some of my colleges, I was applying as a pre-law student. And there were a couple where I was applying as a physics major. And I happened to, I was accepted into the Tufts not focus. It was a 2-day program where we would basically get flown out to the college and get a tour of the campus. And so those 2 days, I think, were what really helped me figure out what specifically I liked about the school and what I wanted in other schools. I ended up doing early decision 2 for Tufts and had applied as an engineering student, and I stuck with that.
It's not what I meant to do. Sorry, the wrong button. Wow, that's amazing. I know, I feel like for those applying to colleges, I feel like you don't quite know what it is that you want until you get to a campus, like until you're kind of at your school and you're like, wow, this is what this is like. So it can be really eye-opening. So I'm really glad that you had the chance to come ahead of time. That's really interesting. Did you apply to a large number of schools?
I applied to over 30 schools. And a lot of them were in-state schools because another decision I had to make was whether or not I wanted to stay close to my family. Mm-hmm. And one of my top choices was also Rice. And I was going based off of my scores and my GPA, but I think that I didn't like Rice for the right reasons, and I ended up getting rejected. So the decision at that point wasn't even mine to make. But a lot of the schools I was applying to were in-state. And in the end, I just decided to leave Texas because I felt like if I didn't do it, then I never really would. I'm the oldest of 5, and my parents are both immigrants. And so I felt like that was my last chance to leave.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, good for you. I'm so happy for you. And since then, do you feel like you made the right decision being at Tufts?
Yeah, I have thought about my choice. Freshman year, I actually thought about transferring to the University of Texas to be close to family. And my mom and I both went to visit UT because it was close to my house. And there were a lot of aspects of Tufts that I really liked. One of it was how small the school was and the location. I also, again, really appreciated that it wasn't in Texas. But I do feel like I have a lot more freedom here than I would have in a school in Texas.
Yeah. No, that's fair. And I think it's a pretty hard stepping stone to kind of take those steps for yourself when you have such a strong sense of family, like belonging and obligation. I think I'm really proud of you for doing that for yourself. That's awesome. I'm excited to see where you go next. All right, Brian, how about you?
Application process was interesting, but also thankfully short. But there was a lot of pain in that short amount of time. Basically, I did not know anything about college. I have an older brother who did go to college, but he went to community college, like that was like a mile away from us. So like the prospect of me going somewhere that wasn't either community college or the where I did research, UTSA, like that idea, it existed because I was at that point I was valedictorian of my school, and like I had got like a good SAT score, whatever, and so I could do it. So I was like, okay, how do I do this? So it was funny because my junior year chemistry professor teacher who wasn't a very good teacher, I will say that, he recommended me this thing called QuestBridge. It's like a scholarship umbrella, like it's like, I don't know what to call them, but they basically match you with different schools depending on, they have like a list of like 40 plus schools that they partner with, and you could basically apply to college through them, kind of. And if you were to get in through them, they basically guarantee you that the school you go to gives you good financial aid, pretty much. And so at this point, he showed me what it was, and there's a junior version of it who basically juniors apply, and if they get in, they're like flown out to California, and and they're taught about school and stuff like that. I applied for it and I got it, but I wasn't able to go because I didn't have the money to like, because they didn't pay for the flight, they would reimburse you. But my family didn't have the money to like buy the flight in the first place, so I couldn't really go. So that kind of sucked. But so I was a Questbridge. I forgot what it's called. It's like college prep program. So they had accepted me to like their college prep program. And even though I didn't go, I had like the title. So then when I was a senior, they have like what I was talking about, the like big Questbridge scholarship application. And essentially it's this huge application. I think it was like 40 pages or something like that. It ended up being. And basically you pick from their 40 plus schools, you pick up to 12. And I picked 12 schools initially, and I applied. So then basically there's 2 steps to the application. So the first step is you apply, and in the middle of September, it's due like September 14th, something like that. You apply, you give them all the list of schools you want to do, and you have like 4 essays. And you basically, at that point, I had gotten the help of my English teacher and my AP teacher, AP US History. And that was pretty much it. Like, it was just me and them and like against the world. Like, I don't know. And so basically I did my essays, did everything, and I ran it through them, and they were like, yeah, this is good. Like, what can we do at this point? Just get it. So I applied, and I sent my application, and then they basically don't tell you anything for like a month. And so the month went by, and I know people don't say this, don't put all your marbles in, like, or what's the saying? Like, don't
put all your eggs in one basket or something?
Yeah, don't put all your eggs in one basket, but that's kind of what I did. because for me, I didn't really see me going to college unless it was paid for. And so at this point, this is something that was like more of like me not knowing, me be like not ignorant, just like me, I just didn't know that if you apply to colleges and if you get in, even like without me having to go through Questbridge, you still get financial aid from the school. I didn't even know it was a thing. Like, that wasn't a thing I knew about. And that's the reality of it. I just didn't know that was a thing. So I in my mind, I just thought if I apply somewhere, I'm not going to get any financial aid, or like I'm not going to get like enough where I could go. So it doesn't really matter if I get in, which is not true. That is false. It depends on the school, of course, but most schools do offer a lot of financial aid if you're from like a first general income background. But I didn't know that. So Questbridge, like, this was my basket. Like, so I put all my eggs in the basket, and I basically risked it all. And so then you first apply to become a finalist. So basically they look at your schools, they look at your application, and they see if you're like, I guess, worthy of like being in one of those schools. And so I think in the middle of October, they let me know that I like was a finalist. And so at this point, you're not into any school or anything, but basically you have to go back to your list. So I had 12 at that point. I cut it down to 9. You have to resubmit your list and make sure like whatever you want to do, like you want to do it. So you resubmit it, and then you have to do like the financial aid stuff, like FAFSA and the college board thing. Those things are really, really, really annoying to do with immigrant parents. Like, a lot of it was just kind of like, what am I doing? Like, it was basically like me, like a 17-year-old looking at like my parents' like money documents, and I was like, what's this? Yeah.
So confusing. Yeah.
Yeah. But then you apply, you like reapply. Basically, there's also essays, depending on like some of the schools had like you have to do like X more supplemental essays, or you have to do like additional stuff for the school. So a lot of them had like I had to do more essays at this point, even though I had written like 4 big ones. So at this point, there's more essays to do, more stuff to do. So I did it all in the span of like 2 weeks, because they give you they let you know like in the middle of October, and the application is due like the first week of November, something like that, or whenever I did it. I don't know if it still is that way. So then round 2 of me risking it all, putting all my eggs in a basket, with this time with less schools. And when December 1st came around, you like open up like the like portal, and like it tells you if you got into a school, if you were matched. So it's possible to not get matched to a school, but even if you don't get matched to a school, because the way it works is that I think the schools have like a limited amount of students they can apply or admit as like a match, kind of. But even if you don't get in through being matched, you can still like reapply to the school and get in as a finalist. Like, that's still a possibility. And it's like what usually happens, like not everybody gets matched, but I actually got matched with Tufts somehow. Like, so I knew December 1st of like my senior year that I was in college, which is pretty cool. It was pretty nice. But like I said, like from August to November like 15th, something like that, I was just freaking it. Yeah, like I was freaking it. It was really it was hard.
Oh my gosh,
It was a
yeah.
tough time. Yeah, but I got matched with Tufts, and I mean the rest is history. But as far as like making a choice for colleges, I didn't really have a choice. Like they chose for me. It was
Yeah.
kind of like you're in.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Wait,
after
what
that
a
you
cool
have to.
program. I feel like
Yeah,
I've never heard of that before.
yeah. It's cool. It's definitely not like the end all be all of like good programs, but it's a good program, I would say.
Wow, that's amazing. How funny. Well, I'm so glad that it worked out like that you got matched this way. That's amazing. Yeah, and I feel like the fall of your senior year is so stressful because that's what everyone's talking about. Everyone's asking you like, oh, were you applying? Did you submit it yet? It's just a lot, you know? And then you turn them in and then you're just waiting, you know, you're like waiting. So you're lucky to have found out in December. I think usually, I don't know about you, Leslie, but I feel like usually submit around like just like usually like the end is like December and you're like waiting until like February or like March to find out. So everyone's just kind of like biting their nails, like checking the mailbox. At least I checked the mailbox. For you all, maybe it was online, but we used to get our stuff in the mail. That's amazing. Well, I guess while we're on this topic of college and the admissions process, do you all have any tips or advice, like things that you wish you had done differently in your admissions process? Or if you can't think of anything, what did you do that you are really glad that you did?
I think I would have probably started preparing for standardized tests before I actually did. One thing is that standardized tests are very expensive, and my school offered vouchers, so we could pretty much take a certain amount for free, which was really nice. But a lot of schools required the SATs and the SAT subject tests. And so one expense already was affording the test itself, and then another expense was buying books or preparing for the exam. And there, I think I definitely put it off way too long. And so I was preparing for the ACT while I was also working on my college applications. And if I would have done it over summer, I think that could have saved me a lot of stress. So one was preparing beforehand for standardized test scores. And another one was also starting my essays earlier, because it took a lot longer than I thought it would. And there were a lot of schools that were asking for additional questions aside from the ones for whatever application you use to apply with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, cool. Awesome.
I think for me, because after I been here at Tufts, I also did like a college advisor type of program. So I became like a pseudo college advisor, kind of to help other high school students. And I think what I've learned the most, or what I wish I would have done a lot sooner, was find the power in like my story and like in who I am, and just like translate that to like find your power and like what makes you you. Because I feel like I don't even want to look at my like essays that I wrote back in this year, because I feel like I could have wrote so much better, a better essay overall, and just talked more about who I was and why I wanted to be in college and why I could be a good student at these X schools. And I think that's one thing I really emphasize when I talk to other high school students that I'm mentoring. Just like, why did you want to also be? One thing that colleges love, as I found out, is like talk about why you want to be at that college. Like literally say, I like this X thing about your college, and
Mm-hmm.
how that would benefit you. So there's a lot more that I know now that I just had no idea back then. But besides what Leslie was saying, just like start early. Like that's for sure. I think as a junior/senior, you're just like, why would I like start this essay in the summer? Like I got the whole summer. Like why would I do that?
Right.
But do it. Start, make a draft, do something. As far as standardized testing, I was one of the like, I mean, my school had no like help at all when it comes to standardized testing. It was kind of, we had free testing, but we didn't have any resources for the test, if that makes sense. Basically, they allowed you to take it for free, but we had vouchers. But as far as like that's it. That's how it ended. We had no like college prep program or SAT
Gotcha.
tutoring. So I kind of just took it, which was like not. I don't recommend that at all, because looking back, I could have done so much better if I studied, which like I didn't get to study, and I still like did well, like based off like the averages, whatever. But I feel like I could have just done better. And at the end of the day, those tests do matter, even though that like to me they don't. Me as a person, like I don't think a student is more or less worthy because of a SAT score, but they do help and they do matter to some colleges. And I think now a lot of colleges are actually not requiring them anymore, but students still take them anyway because it's to like boost their application. So it's one of those things where, yeah, it's not required anymore, but you should still try to take it and try to do well so you could stick out. Because I think also for me, coming from like the low income school, like I feel like my essays weren't as good as they could have been, also because of just like that's the best I could do, you know, at that point, you know what I'm saying? And that I feel like in that regard, that wouldn't have been shown. That wouldn't have been shown if I just kind of submitted the essays by themselves. If that makes sense. So I would say just try your best to do everything you can, but just do what you can also. If it, like that makes sense, just do what you can do. Don't um don't overwork yourself, because at the end of the day, like we will figure it out. Like as I think a lot of families will figure it out, and like it'll be okay.
Yeah,
Don't
I
get
think
too
it's a
caught up.
really, yeah, it's a really high pressure situation. I think, I feel like in that whole process, you're like really in your head about, well, what do I have to put on my application? And, am I good enough to get in here? And I think it can really lead to a very anxiety inducing few months. So I love that, just like do what you can and it'll all work out. Absolutely. All right, well, thank you all for sharing that. That is really, really awesome insight. So moving to your current state here at Tufts, and being STEM majors and these wonderful STEM ambassadors, what, maybe we can talk like kind of in two parts, right? Like how have your intersecting identities, how have they shaped your experience at Tufts? And what advice might you give someone with underrepresented identities who wants to pursue a major or a career in STEM? So kind of two parts.
I think that for me, it has definitely made everything a lot more difficult. Just because, I mean, the mechanical engineering department and the engineering school, wherever you go, is going to be mostly white. And here at Tufts, it's also very wealthy. So there have been times where I have been in group settings where I'm the only woman, I'm the only person of color, I'm the only woman of color, and I'm not taken seriously. And it's sometimes not something that's very obvious, but it's the subtlety in which people talk to you and the way that they behave around you. I'm in a team, and this happens way too often, but whenever it's a group setting and people are talking to each other, they just won't look at me, or I say something and I'll be completely ignored. I've been in other situations where I've worked at an engineering company and I've gotten confused with the cleaning staff. There have been other moments where people have come up to me at my desk and asked where I was from. And so I think that there are always going to be a lot of barriers we have to jump over because of our identities. But I think one thing that has really helped me is finding a community on campus. And sometimes it is hard to do. In the mechanical engineering department, there aren't very many students of color, but I am friends with all of them. And one of them I actually live with. And so having a support system on campus, it doesn't have to be your number one friend group, but knowing that there are people who share your experiences is always helpful, because I think it just gets very lonely. And knowing that there's this group that is always going to be there for you and that's going to understand what you're going through is really what's been helping me thus far.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think, I mean, to encounter that many microaggressions all the time, I mean, it's very isolating. And I think it's sometimes, and when things have been said or done to me, it's almost like, am I imagining this? Like this is actually happening right now, and you're not making it up or anything. And it's really demoralizing. So I love that, you've really relied on your community, like if that's friends within your major, people who share similar identities with you. I mean, I think at the end of the day, I think that we really rely on our community to help get us through these really hard moments. How have you been able to find your community here at Tufts?
Freshman year, it was when everything was still in person. And so I actually did a pre-orientation that was focused for first generation low income students. And so that was my first introduction to the community and was where I met my first group of friends. And then I met my second group at the Latinx Center at one of the open houses. And then the third group was actually at the CSD through STEM ambassadors. And so I think a lot of it was just finding specific environments on campus where there would be other students of color. And I think just because our community is so small, it's like very easy to know each other. And so for me, it was mostly just going into these spaces that were our safe spaces and interacting with the people in them.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. I'm sorry that's been your experience. I think it's, yeah, just horrible. All right, Brian, how about you?
I want to reiterate what Leslie was saying is with like find power in the communities that you identify with and like unite and get through it together, because that's what's gotten me through the biochemistry major as a whole and just being here at Tufts as a whole. I struggled a lot freshman year with feeling like I belonged here, but what always kept me here and kept me grounded in staying here and not transferring and not like thinking about all that was really the first center and just the people that were at the first center. But with that being said, I know that a lot of schools don't have that. That's not something that's like a common thing. And I know it can be hard to find your communities in a lot of places, or from what I understand of like other colleges, especially specifically like my high school friends, how like what they went to. And so with that being said, I want to talk about how you should be able, not be able, but like try to do your best to talk to people in your classes. Because at the end of the day, they're the ones doing the exact same assignments, the exact same exams you're doing. And that's what's getting me through this semester right now, because I'm at the very end of my major. And to be honest, people, no one that I'm friends with at the moment that, or like in my major wise, I didn't know any of them before the semester, but we're all just collectively going, having a really rough time, but we're all like in it together. And that's what's got keeping us going, keeping us pushing. Because we all know that this is really hard. Like biochemistry is not it's like just really hard. And I'm sure engineering is equally, if not more difficult. And any major for like saying that any major is really difficult. But I think at any moment, I just always make sure that I feel supported. And if I don't, I try to feel supported, because I'm not a very, I mean, I'm independent in the way that like I'll do my work, yeah, but I love thriving together. I'm also like a very community driven person, I would say. And I also care about my friends too, like how are they doing? Like keep up with them too. But basically talk to people, make friends, and try to survive together is my honest opinion. Because some people really like just try to tough it out by themselves, and some people would make it work, but I personally would not be able to do that. And I'm gonna just be honest with that and just say that that's really helped me get through it, and that's something that I really would want people to try.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I'm so glad that the First Center was such a wonderful resource for you. And I think you're so right that, you know, this is one of the first, I've worked at 6 different schools, and I think this is the first one that the second one I've been at that actually has a center for first gen students. So it really is really incredible. And I think, you know, whether it be like a multicultural center that tries to hit all the different identities or whatever, I think finding that space where they see you and acknowledge you and celebrate you is so critical. So, and it's cool that you know that about yourself, that you really are very community driven, right? And that you excel and, you know, thrive in those spaces. Is that something that you have learned about yourself since your first year, or, you know, have you always done this by yourself?
I definitely learned about that completely, like being here at Tufts, because that's the only reason why I'm currently a senior at Tufts University. You know what I'm saying? I don't think I would have probably transferred by now or just like dropped out if I wasn't a part of these communities or didn't reach out. because I just figured it out here. And like, yeah, in high school, like I was just doing my work, and like it was different in high school because I guess I was the one basically like helping. But when I got here, like I needed the help. So I was like, guys, please.
You know,
So
it's a hard
yeah,
transition to make where you go
yeah.
from like being the best in your school then to reaching out for help or getting a tutor or whatever. I think it's a transition that a lot of students have a hard time going through. Yeah. Wow. All right. Well, thanks for sharing that. Penny, do we have time for another question, or should we cut out? Should we end it there?
We do have some time for other questions. I haven't seen anything come through the chat, but
Okay. Okay, great. Maybe we can do one more. So I know you all talked about how, had it not been for the groups and the communities that you have found here at Tufts, you probably wouldn't be where you are today, which is pretty incredible to think about. So do you have any like tips or insights for resiliency, for staying motivated? I know, especially since the pandemic began last year, I think it's been even harder to do our lives. So yeah, what insights, what thoughts do you have that help keep you going and keep you motivated? What would you pass on?
I think for me, it's both a combination of resentment towards the community that has made my life so much more difficult, but also a lot of appreciation for my family who I think the comparison is interesting because the things I experience now as a woman of color in engineering, I think are nowhere near as difficult as experiences my parents had coming to a new country and risking everything for me to have this opportunity. And so for one, I do resent a lot of the white people that have made my journey in engineering more difficult. And I think that that is a driver in me still wanting to continue just to prove to them that I can. But another and a more healthy motivator, I think, is my family. I think that for my parents, it was a big deal for me to get into school and to graduate high school. My dad didn't even finish middle school. And so getting accepted into college for them was all they wanted and the reason they came to this country. And I look back, I think, to when I was in high school, and I took a lot of the things they did for me for granted. And it wasn't until I was in college and I was missing my family that I realized how much I had to repay them. And my parents aren't expecting much from me after I got into college, but I think having them in the back of my mind and constantly thinking about my community and how I can help them is what's really kept me going.
Yeah. That's amazing. Thank you. Yes. And I think, it's interesting too. I think that contrast is so fascinating, like the two different sides of the coin, but both super valid and absolutely strong motivators. So thank you. Oh my gosh. All right, Brian, how about you?
I think very similarly to Leslie, I really look to my parents and to my brother just to find a lot of the motivation that I need, because at the end of the day, I really just, so I here at Tufts and I'm like, okay, I have this physical chemistry test coming up, and I'm like, okay, this is gonna be hard. I know that, but I just really, I do this whenever I'm like really, really desperate, where I'm just like to the point where like I'm freaking out. I'm like pulling my hair out. I'm just like, okay, my dad literally came to the United States with nothing, and like we have a house now, and I'm here at Tufts. Like I just gotta like, I'm like, Brian, you can do this. Like it's doable. Like you know what I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
there's been crazier things, and not to say that like my situation isn't hard. Like it's still hard. Like I'm not trying to downplay or like how hard my future is or anything, but I find a lot of strength in my parents and just everything that they've done, and how much resilience and strength and just every like positive word they've showed to me in my life, and how much I want to, as you said, give back to them even though they expect nothing. Like at this point, it's so cool too, because even now my parents who did not finish high school, did not like do anything as far as education, they like own a house as of this month. Like they just finished paying it off.
Oh my
And
gosh, that's amazing.
I'm just like, wow, like what the heck? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I just find a lot of strength in them, and just like calling my mom, calling my dad, and then in so many ways, just beyond just working hard, like also just the way that I go about my days and just the way that I show my emotions towards people. I really just look to my parents and look to what I could do to get to where I want to be. So I want to be like at a place where I can provide for my family and not be a problem. And like I'm getting there. And beyond that, I just want to be a good person and like make it out of here alive, make it out of here happy. And I'm trying my best and it's working, but it's also like a lot of times it feels very like helpless. But I think as you were talking about like what's kept us grounded, what's kept us like resilient, for me, it's really been family. And I think it's important to find that whatever that is for you, whether that be your family, whether that be somebody, whether that be your friend or like money or a job or something needs to keep you grounded and like afloat. And for me it's family, and then for you it's like whatever you need it to be or whatever it is.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I think a similar thread for the two of you, I think, is you have such great scope. I think you have a really great perspective on the really important things, and I think having backgrounds like that, I think it just really helps you appreciate what's super important. My father as well, he came with a broken suitcase and $6, and so, and here he is, super successful. So it's just, I think it's really powerful to have family history like that, where it just really reminds you of the power that we have and the things that we can accomplish. Again, doesn't necessarily have to minimize how hard things are in the moment, and doesn't invalidate those experiences. More just, as you're saying, it just really helps get you through these really challenging times. So that's fantastic. Well, thank you both for sharing. I think that's probably a good place for us to stop. So I'm just gonna say thank you both for taking the time to talk with me and whoever else is lucky enough to watch this. I really appreciate hearing all of your insights and thoughts and tips. It's been really, really, really wonderful. So thank you.
Yeah, I just want to echo that. This was incredible. Just the perspectives that everyone on this panel has brought to the table. It's just so unique, and it's so powerful when the attendees can hear this coming from people directly. So thank you, Brian, Leslie, and thank you, Sophia, so much for moderating. STEM Week it's so important because you can't be what you can't see, and this panel just like completely exemplified how we can do that virtually, so attendees can see what they can be one day, which is people of color working in STEM. So thank you all so much for taking the time to do this. We're recording this event, so we will also post it and share it with schools as well, and for folks who can't attend. So thanks so much, everyone. Have a great night.